Continuing to look at the new iPhone 13 Pro Max, and today specifically checking out the brand new 3x telephoto lens, the 77mm lens. This is actually one of the features I was most interested in, and so what I've done is test and compare it to the 12 Pro Max. Want to see how different or how much better or worse the 13 Pro Max is compared to its predecessor. The new 77mm is a 3x telephoto, and so it is obviously longer than the 12 Pro Max, and I think it is a little bit sharper. Very similar looks here, although the 13 Pro Max, I would say, has a little bit more shallow depth of field and is just ever so slightly sharper. And really, mainly when you're pixel peeping, you can see it. So this isn't low light, but it is lower light. And the new 13 Pro Max has an f2.8 compared to the f2.2 from the 12 Pro Max. And so it does make a difference. In this scenario, you just have to have a little bit of higher ISO on the 13 Pro Max. Doesn't really affect the image quality though. They both look good here, and they both have minimal noise. And same with these shots. The 13 Pro Max needed a little bit more ISO. And interestingly, I like the bokeh better on the 13 Pro Max. Now this is actually low light and a high ISO shooting scenario, which you really wouldn't want to ever do. However, I did want to test it. So the 13 Pro has ISO of 1334 and the 12 Pro Max is ISO of 787, both entirely too high. Now all things considered, it actually held up pretty well. These newer phones do much better in low light, but the image does get softer and noisier. Now here I did a series of tests with stabilization. Stabilization really hasn't changed between the two lenses, but since one is more telephoto, I wanted to see how they compared. Really, for the most part, they're very similar in these first two tests. But in this handheld walking shot, things are a little bit different. The 12 Pro Max does better in this scenario just because it's a wider lens and so it doesn't bounce as much as you're walking. And now this test will show you how terrible optical image stabilization is on phones. Both those shots are unusable. This has long been an issue with iPhones until recently with the 12 Pro Max and its wide camera lens. And that's because they added sensor shift stabilization to the wide only. I hope in the next version of iPhones, they'll add this technology to the telephoto too. So they're stabilizing the sensor, not the actual lens. This is like IBIS in a mirrorless camera. And so these are the wide lenses just to demonstrate how that is compared to the Tele. It's not perfect here, but it is night and day better. And this is an extreme example, this pea gravel type pool deck. So really overall, it's mainly about the focal length and the shallow depth of field. You do get more of both of those with the longer lens. But otherwise, they're very similar, and the 12 Pro Max is actually better in low light, and also the stabilization is better, really just because it's a wider lens. To really see a bigger difference, you would probably need to be coming from an 11 Pro Max or before. The focal length and zoom range is considerably increased from that older device to this brand new one. And depending on what you're shooting, that can be a pretty big deal. And speaking of that, adding additional lenses on the Tele is something I love to do, and so here is a quick early preview of doing that. But note that this is B-script gear. It has not been updated to work with the 13 Pro Max yet. And so the image quality is not perfect, but it does look pretty good and will give you a glimpse of what's to come once this stuff is ready for prime time. And that includes their anamorphic lenses. Again, the alignment here is not perfect for now, but I still wanted to test it. And I'll come back to this in a future video once everything's been updated and optimized. So I really like the built-in 3x Tele and will be using it a lot. And by the way, it works with cinematic mode too, which is something that I will be exploring in an upcoming video. Thanks for watching. This is Blake Calhoun. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.